All right, back in Studio C. Been a little while. I don't like the chair rocks back and forth while I'm trying to record. It's hard to keep from doing that. But I wanted to keep this one a little more casual. Um, it's going to take just a second to get to my point here about G4TV versus Geeks and Gamers. So I'm going to start with the end a little bit here and say that I really love what Jeremy's doing with Geeks and Gamers. And I think that if he keeps doing this, it's going to show how bankrupt the opposition to him really is intellectually. There's a saying, people who love slogans. I don't like slogans because it often causes you to sort of funnel your thinking into one direction. And that's not always the case. In fact, sometimes slogans can be very helpful, but many times when someone uses a lot of slogans, I have a tendency to question how much they actually think about things, like most politicians. And there's a slogan that one politician in particular loved to say, and that is, so-and-so's on the wrong side of history. Remember that one? You actually don't have to be that old to remember it. So-and-so's on the wrong side of history. I call this the fallacy of appealing to posterity. The idea is that some future generation is going to be more objective than we currently are. Now, in some sense, that would be true, right? Because they could look back at history, at us, with no emotion and not living in the moment. But aren't we someone else's posterity? Can we not look back at history and ask good questions? Well, you can't on YouTube because you'll get censored. In fact, you can't really, with big tech companies and most leftists these days, not all leftists, by the way, but many leftists these days, they're closed off to things like learning from history because you can't pick certain things to learn from and eject the rest. You have to try to learn from it as a whole and actually have a meeting of minds, which is why I like what Jeremy's doing. He's offering a meeting of minds. And he's doing it in a forum that probably won't get him censored. And that's a kind of a big deal. And I know it's hard for people to understand why it is, but it is. So we're someone else's future generation. And these people that would claim that you can learn from history, why are they appealing to some future historians to critique us now? How do we know they're actually going to be objective? I'll give you a great example of it. I won't say the name of it. There is a video game development company that made a game not too long ago. I found out because I bought the game and found out afterwards, I wish I had never bought it, that these were avowed Stalinists. Well, how are they learning from history if they're Stalinists? He's one of the greatest mass murderers in the history of the world. And it's kind of amazing when you stop and think about it. Okay, so let me rush to the point here so I don't belabor it for too long. If we're to say that we can learn from history, okay, and we can be objective, this ties into something I was saying about G4TV and Frost earlier, and feminism in general, and really just liberal progressivism. And that is this idea that, and you may have caught a contradiction, I mentioned it briefly, in the whole idea of progressivism that says, okay, morality is determined by society, change society, you change morality, right? And so feminists are a part of that whole endeavor to change society's moral norms. And you may have caught the contradiction in, well, wait a minute, how can you be progressive if you can't go outside of society to figure out what's right and wrong? Because after all, aren't there societies who have been wrong? Well, of course there have been. So what's the standard then? Well, the standard, they would ultimately have to say themselves. What do we call that today? We call that gatekeeping, is exactly what we call that. Why is it that when a conservative apologizes, they get canceled, But when a liberal apologizes, it's progression. Think about what's happening with Frosk. She is paying penance for the sins of G4TV's past. It's exactly what she's doing. I said this in my previous video. I'm not trying to say, oh, I made a prediction. That's not what I'm saying. It's just obvious when you really stop and look at it. I said that showing contradictions wasn't going to do any good. Showing hypocrisy wasn't going to do any good, because change itself is progressivism. It doesn't matter where the change is going to. So the fact that they've changed it all, provided they hold to one litmus test, which is that they remain woke or progressive, then they're absolved of their past sins. So there's this sort of gatekeeping element where unless you're in that camp, no matter what you do, you deserve to be canceled. But you can make big sins in the past, and as long as you're on that track, you can pay for it. Does that make any sense? I hope it does, because I think it's really important. I think this is an opportunity for people to learn why there is a fountain that's producing our problems, and that fountain is leftism. Now, some people that anyone gets a chance to watch this may be leftists, and I'm going to tell you, you really have to ask the question: do these problems actually come from the right? They don't. Who's being more open-minded? Jeremy at Geeks and Gamers, or Frosk of G4TV, or Adam Sessler on G4TV? Who's actually being more open-minded? If you haven't watched recently what's going on with Geeks and Gamers, he's asking you, if you don't like what you're seeing and you're a leftist, you're welcome here. I think this is critically important. It's showing you that the things of the past that were commonly considered democratic or leftist are things now they've abandoned. Now, they are not things that are foreign to the right wing at all. Okay, I promise you that they're not. And if you look through history and you look at the way people on the right have defended themselves and defended their worldview, they have clearly made statements about their issues with leftists, and they've remained the same. That's part of being conservative, right? Is you have critiques that you hold to, and they pretty much remain the same. So what I really wanted to get on here to mention was kind of clear up what I spoke about last time, and it's to mention one more thing. So someone big at G4TV, I think a producer, I think he's a pretty high up there at G4TV, said the thing that I kind of mentioned in the previous video. In the previous video, I said, they're telling you not to watch their programming if you disagree with the things Frosk is saying. This was penance. Frosk was coming out. She was absolving G4TV of its past, right? So you can't get them on hypocrisy, even though this is more intuitive for them. And what she was doing is saying, look, we're done with the past. And if you're part of that, which is you males, you're not welcome here. And the reason, and then I went on to say that the calling them hypocrisy wouldn't stick. And lo and behold, this guy comes out yesterday with a tweet saying, yeah, don't watch. So I know it's not a big, profound conclusion to say not to watch, but really, honestly, you shouldn't watch. And I'd add one last thing. Don't spend any time thinking that you're getting them back for not watching. It's a very tempting prospect to say, okay, well, I'm going to talk to other people who aren't watching. They'll see what happens to them. I think you should just, what would be more important wouldn't be for G4TV to die, but for that worldview to die. Because that worldview is a problem. And we need not just people on the right to see this. We actually need people on the left to see it. We need them to look and say, well, where's this stuff coming from? And ask questions about how they're really explaining the world they're living in without appealing to future generations, but actually learning from the past without looking at the past and abandoning some truths that are there. Not enough time to go over all that in this video, but it's a really interesting thing to contemplate in light of what's going on in pop culture right now.